In December 1996, Sebastian Bach checked his answering machine and heard a message that would change his life forever. After leaving an expletive-filled tirade on guitarist Dave "Snake" Sabo's voicemail over a potential Kiss tour, the Skid Row frontman was fired from the band he'd helped build into a 20 million album-selling powerhouse. Just 5 years earlier, Skid Row had made history when their album, Slave to the Grind, became the first heavy metal album to debut at #1 on the Billboard charts. Now Bach would have to watch as his former bandmates turned down reunion offers worth hundreds of thousands of dollars while he rebuilt his career through Broadway, reality TV, and solo albums, only to see much of what he'd built literally wash away in a devastating natural disaster. Before Skid Row became one of rock's biggest acts, they were just another local band trying to make it in New Jersey. Their fortunes changed dramatically when John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora took notice of the group. In an era when top metal frontmen commanded base salaries between $100,000 and $500,000 annually, plus tour bonuses of $1,000 to $5,000 per show, Bach and his bandmates faced a different reality. The seeds of discontent had been planted years earlier when the band signed with Underground Music Company, waiving their publishing rights to Bon Jovi and Sambora. While standard splits typically gave songwriters 50 to 100% of rights, Bach and his bandmates had given away millions in potential earnings. This festering resentment over lost revenue would ultimately contribute to their breaking point. In January 1989, Skid Row released their self-titled debut album. Under typical record deals of the era, bands earned 10 to 15% of wholesale album prices split among members. The record was an immediate success, eventually selling nearly 6 million copies worldwide. Singles like 18 in Life and I Remember You cracked the Billboard Top 10, while Youth Gone Wild became an anthem for rebellious teens across America. Their videos dominated MTV's rotation, turning Bach into one of rock's most recognizable frontmen. The band's sophomore album, Slave to the Grind, proved even more successful, making history as the first heavy metal album to debut at #1 on the Billboard charts. But behind the scenes, the seeds of destruction were already being planted. Though Richie Sambora eventually returned his share of the publishing rights to the band, tensions remained high. By 1995, their third album, Subhuman Race, showed signs of trouble. The record peaked at just #35 on the Billboard charts, selling only a fraction of their previous releases. The rise of grunge had changed the musical landscape, and bands like Skid Row found themselves struggling to adapt. Internal tensions grew as album sales declined, setting the stage for the explosive confrontation that would end Bach's time with the band. By late 1996, Skid Row had reached a crossroads. After 3 albums and world tours, the relationship between Bach and his bandmates had deteriorated significantly. While comparable metal bands of their era had earned tour guarantees between $25,000 to $75,000 per show at their peak, Skid Row's declining album sales were affecting their ability to command top dollar. The timing couldn't have been worse. Grunge had transformed the musical landscape, with Nirvana and Pearl Jam packing arenas while metal bands struggled to fill clubs. What had once been a powerful draw, Skid Row's polished metal sound and image, had become a liability in this new era. This industry-wide shift put additional pressure on a band already dealing with internal tensions. The final breaking point came when Kiss approached Bach about Skid Row opening for their highly anticipated reunion tour. For Bach, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to reinvigorate the band's declining fortunes. But his bandmates saw things differently. Without consulting the rest of Skid Row, Bach accepted the Kiss tour offer. When his bandmates discovered what he'd done, they were furious. The band had already committed to other plans, and Bach's unilateral decision only amplified existing tensions. In a moment of anger, Bach left an expletive-laden message on guitarist Dave "Snake" Sabo's answering machine. It would prove to be the last straw. Snake and bassist Rachel Bolan had grown tired of Bach's behavior. Beyond the Kiss tour incident, there were deeper issues at play. Drug use had become a sore point within the band, and Bach's public incidents had cost them dearly. Years earlier, a bottle-throwing incident had resulted in a six-figure settlement, with Bach paying half and his bandmates covering the rest. With insurance companies demanding higher risk premiums due to such incidents, even successful shows barely covered their mounting expenses. The band's response came swiftly. In December 1996, Bach received the message that ended his tenure with Skid Row. After selling 20 million albums worldwide, records that with standard royalty rates of 10 to 15% of wholesale prices should have generated millions in revenue, Bach was out of the group he'd helped build into a metal powerhouse. The split was more than just the end of a successful band. It marked the beginning of a bitter divide that would last decades. While other bands from their era eventually reunited, Skid Row's members remained firmly opposed to working with Bach again. Snake would later describe the prospect of reuniting with Bach as toxic, citing quality-of-life issues that no amount of money could resolve. For Bach, it meant walking away from a catalog that would later generate substantial streaming revenue, with songs like 18 in Life consistently earning digital performance royalties through platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. After leaving Skid Row, Bach faced the daunting challenge of reinventing himself in an industry that had already moved on from the 80s metal scene. His 1999 debut solo album, Bring 'Em Bach Alive, sold just 16,979 copies in the US, a stark contrast to the multi-platinum success he'd known with Skid Row. Rather than fade away, Bach began exploring opportunities beyond the hard rock world. His 2000 pivot to Broadway proved surprisingly lucrative. While standard Broadway performers earned base salaries of $1,500 to $1,800 weekly during this period, stars could command higher rates plus performance bonuses, typically $2,600 for completing long runs. Bach's success in the lead role of Jekyll and Hyde led to an extended run through October. He followed this with roles in the Rocky Horror Show in 2001, and by 2002, he was starring in Jesus Christ Superstar's national touring production, with each production offering standard 6-month to 1-year contracts. Despite finding success on stage, Bach couldn't escape financial reality. His reality TV appearances became crucial income sources, with shows typically paying established musicians between $10,000 to $50,000 per episode. "I don't do celebrity rap superstar because I want to be a celebrity rap superstar," he later admitted. "I do that so I can pay my mortgage." His reality TV career included stints on Celebrity Rap Superstar in 2007, where he placed third, Gone Country, which he won in 2008, and a recurring role on Gilmore Girls. Adding to Bach's frustration, Skid Row began receiving lucrative reunion offers. Each rejection reinforced the growing divide between Bach and his former bandmates, setting the stage for years of failed attempts to reunite the classic lineup. Bach kept pushing forward with solo material, adapting his approach with each release. While his 2007 album Angel Down sold over 6,000 copies and 2011's Kicking and Screaming peaked at number 73 on the Billboard chart, the metrics of success had changed. As the industry shifted toward streaming, Bach learned to measure victory differently. He began focusing on building a dedicated fan base rather than chasing platinum records, touring consistently to support each release. This strategy proved prescient as streaming platforms opened new revenue possibilities, providing another steady income stream. Meanwhile, his former bandmates consistently turned down lucrative reunion offers. One proposal would have paid the band $500,000 for just 2 shows. At a time when comparable 80s metal acts were earning $25,000 to $75,000 per night on the nostalgia circuit. Despite the potential payday, Snake Sabo maintained that it's never been about the money for Skid Row. The band's refusal to reunite with Bach, even for substantial sums, suggested the wounds from their split ran deeper than anyone had realized. In August 2011, Bach's career trajectory took an unexpected turn when Hurricane Irene slammed into New Jersey. The storm's floodwaters ravaged his Lincroft home, knocking it off its foundation and destroying decades of irreplaceable memorabilia. Among the casualties were Kiss gargoyles from their 1979 tour, a Kiss pinball machine, and countless boxes of one-of-a-kind Skid Row memorabilia, including master tapes of both audio and video recordings. The financial impact was devastating. The house Bach had owned for over 25 years had to be condemned. When he initially tried to sell the property in 2012, Bach asked $669,000. But the severe structural damage from the flooding forced him to continually lower the price. By 2016, he finally sold the property for just $272,500, approximately $85,000 less than what he'd paid for it decades earlier. The loss extended beyond just property value. The destruction of his memorabilia collection represented the physical erasure of much of Bach's musical history. While he would later work to rebuild his record collection, many of the lost items were truly irreplaceable. The disaster forced Bach to relocate and essentially start over, both personally and professionally. Adding to the challenges, this setback came just as Bach was trying to re-establish himself in the music industry. His album, Kicking and Screaming, was set for release the following month, but the natural disaster overshadowed any momentum the record might have generated. The timing couldn't have been worse for an artist already struggling to maintain his commercial relevance. The destruction of Bach's home coincided with a period of increased pressure for a Skid Row reunion. While Bach worked to rebuild his life, promoters saw the potential in rock's nostalgia boom. One offer would have paid the band $500,000 for just 2 shows, a testament to the enduring appeal of the classic Skid Row lineup. For comparison, other legacy acts from their era were earning $25,000 to $75,000 per night on the nostalgia circuit. But money wasn't enough to bridge the divide. In 2016, Rachel Bolan and Snake Sabo went as far as discussing potential reunion terms with agents and promoters. The talks generated excitement among fans but ultimately led nowhere. The financial stakes were significant. In today's market, established 80s rock acts typically command $40 to $150 for standard tickets and $150 to $500 for VIP packages at mid-sized venues holding 2,000 to 5,000 fans. With artists keeping 70 to 80% of merchandise revenue and earning substantial performance royalties from streaming platforms, reunited bands could generate millions in annual revenue. The reality of these failed reunion attempts became increasingly public through Bach's social media presence. As he watched other bands from their era successfully reunite, Mötley Crüe, Guns N' Roses, even Kiss, Bach's frustration became increasingly public. His posts often highlighted the financial opportunities the band was passing up, while his former bandmates remained steadfast in their refusal to work with him again. This dynamic played out against the backdrop of Bach's continued solo career. His 2014 album, Give 'Em Hell, peaked at number 72 on the Billboard chart, selling over 4,000 copies in its first week. While streaming revenues were modest, even these small payments meant Bach's Skid Row catalog was generating more income than his new releases. Industry insiders estimated that a full reunion tour could have generated millions in revenue through ticket sales, VIP packages, and merchandise, with premium meet-and-greet experiences alone potentially bringing in $200 to $500 per fan. By 2022, with multiple offers rejected and countless opportunities missed, both sides seem to have accepted the permanence of their separation. Skid Row moved forward with their new singer Eric Grönwall, releasing The Gang's All Here, while Bach focused on his solo work. The contrast was stark, Skid Row playing to smaller venues while Bach performed their hits to similar-sized crowds, neither achieving the draw they'd had together. The situation highlighted a unique dynamic in rock music. Sometimes the business case for reunion isn't enough to overcome personal differences. While bands like Guns N' Roses had shown that time could heal old wounds, their Not in This Lifetime tour grossed over $584 million. Skid Row and Bach remained a cautionary tale about the human cost of success in the music industry. Bach's path to reinvention began to take shape in 2016 with his autobiography, 18 and Life on Skid Row. The book earned critical acclaim, making NPR's Best Books of 2017 list and allowing Bach to tell his side of the story. More importantly, it marked a shift in how he presented himself to the world. No longer just the former singer of Skid Row, but a multifaceted entertainer who had survived the industry's ups and downs. His versatility became increasingly apparent through various media appearances. While continuing to tour and perform Skid Row's hits alongside his solo material, Bach expanded his reach through voice acting work. Guest spots on animated series like SpongeBob SquarePants, where he voiced Prince Triton, typically commanded fees between $3,000 to $5,000 per episode for established performers. He built a strong social media presence, amassing nearly 489,000 followers on Instagram and 1 million followers on Facebook. These platforms allowed him to connect directly with fans, bypassing traditional media channels that had largely moved on from 80s metal. The streaming era brought unexpected benefits. As digital platforms made older catalogs profitable again, Skid Row's music became a steady source of income. Bach's complicated relationship with the material was evident when he noted, "When I get a substantial royalty check for an album, I did with musicians that I haven't been in the same room with since 1996, I feel like a piece of shit." Nevertheless, these royalties, combined with his touring income and merchandise sales, where artists typically keep 70 to 80% of revenue, helped stabilize his career. By 2023, Bach had established himself as a reliable live performer, consistently drawing crowds to venues ranging from the 19,000-capacity Merriweather Post Pavilion to more intimate settings like the 2,500-capacity Avalon Events Center. This range demonstrated his ability to adapt to different markets and audience sizes, with ticket prices typically ranging from $40 to $150 for standard admission and $150 to $500 for VIP packages. His upcoming 2024 album, Child Within the Man, through Reigning Phoenix Music, showed his continued commitment to creating new music, even as he celebrated the 35th anniversary of Skid Row's debut album. The transformation wasn't just professional. Bach had also confronted his personal demons. After admitting to drinking every night of my life for probably 25 years, he chose sobriety to protect his voice and career longevity. This decision proved crucial. In an era where social media could instantly amplify any on-stage mistake, Bach's consistent vocal performances helped maintain his drawing power and justify those $25,000 to $75,000 per show guarantees. "You have to make a choice of whether you want to be in this for a long time or not be your best," he explained, demonstrating a maturity that might have surprised his younger self. Today, Sebastian Bach's story reads differently than many might have expected when he was fired from Skid Row in 1996. While his former bandmates continue performing with their fifth different singer, Bach has carved out his own niche in the music industry. His upcoming 2024 album, Child Within the Man, represents both a return to his rock roots and an acknowledgement of his growth as an artist. The numbers paint a clear picture of his adaptability. From arena-filling rock star to Broadway performer to social media-savvy entertainer, Bach has experienced both the peaks and valleys of the music business. Yet he's adapted and survived, building a social media following of over 1 million fans across platforms and maintaining a steady touring schedule at venues ranging from intimate clubs to major festivals. Perhaps most significantly, Bach has outlasted many of his contemporaries from the 80s metal scene. While some bands from that era have been reduced to nostalgia acts, Bach continues creating new music and exploring different artistic avenues. His work on Broadway, in voice acting, and in television has shown a versatility that few would have predicted during his Skid Row days. The lost memorabilia from Hurricane Irene serves as a fitting metaphor for Bach's journey. Sometimes you have to lose everything to build something new. From the ashes of that disaster and the repeated rejections of reunion offers, Bach has emerged as something more than just a former metal frontman. He's become a survivor in an industry notorious for discarding its heroes. Bach's story ultimately isn't about what could have been, but rather what was and what still could be. While a Skid Row reunion seems increasingly unlikely, Bach continues to evolve and perform, proving that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to fade away.